Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette. We're so glad you've joined us today to stay curious. November 7th, 2024, and this is the 27th anniversary of the dedication of this green screen behind me, our Gemini Monument at Spaceview Park. And I'm going to take you on a little trip around Spaceview Park today, and maybe next year we'll be out there live to do it on the anniversary here. But this is one of the four monuments that we have out there. The Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and Shuttle monuments are the fixtures at the downtown Titusville Park that was developed in the 1990s to celebrate the birth of America's space age right here in its delivery room, Brevard County. And you've heard me say that time and time again, that these monuments to me are like the Taj Mahal, the Eiffel Tower, the Roman Colosseum, the only place in the world you can put your hands on top of the bronze handprints of our astronaut heroes of those programs. So sit back and enjoy the show here a little bit. We do have a question from Marty. We've got John on the board there. John, how are you today?
I'm doing
Chiming
good.
in there.
Mark, I am doing
Hit
good.
the hit your button on the UCAC family microphone
There we go.
there.
Hey, thanks for that awesome microphone, by the way. But yeah, doing good. I'm having a great day. I'm actually setting up Mark's screen here, so he'll actually be able to see the chat with you guys. But I'm enjoying it. I hope you are having, or everyone's having a great sunny day. And if I missed the launch that went up.
Yeah, we heard the rumble in here in our studio,
Yeah.
and didn't get out in time to see it. But if I did, there was nothing but clouds to look at, as these giant cumulus clouds, or kind of rain clouds, are still out there. And the rocket went up through there to put up another 24 of those Starlink satellites up there that are revolutionizing communication around the
I thought a
world.
truck was going by. I'm
In
like,
there.
that was a rumble. I thought it was a truck. But it
Yes,
wasn't.
yes. We missed the launch there working on this program. John Graham, his wife, Samantha, Space Coast Sam, was on a program we had about 2 weeks ago. They have become good partners of our museum because they know the techie stuff here to take us to the next level. And not that our good friend Marty Winkle doesn't, but Marty and I have been doing this pretty much on the fly, learning as we've gone along for 1,160 some episodes, John.
That's a
So
lot of episodes.
over 4.5 years of doing this, and we miss Marty, but hello, brother. He's up in Calverton, Long Island, New York, with family up there, and might be back next week. We'll see. But Marty's been enjoying a real nice autumn in the Northeast up there, where it's cool days, cool evenings, and low humidity. Because man, have we got slammed by the humidity this week from that hurricane that's going, missing us, but going over into the Gulf in there. But pretty humid these days there. But kicking it off here, we're going to let you know that we do honor veterans. We are the American Space Museum, and the whole month of November, veterans, whether you're retired or active, are here, welcome here for free. That saves you your $8 military fee. Senior citizens are also $8. Kids under 12 and under are free. So as teenagers, we charge $5 too. We're the best bargain on Space Coast tourism. You better believe it. Of course, Veterans Day is Monday, November 11th, and we'll be celebrating that with a special program of astronauts who are veterans. And museum will be open, so come on down here and check out what we have to offer. You couldn't have the American space program without the veteran military test pilots that pioneered this amazing chapter of American history that will live on for centuries, we know for sure. So got my screen in front of me to say howdy to Carlton Bailey. He's home from the launch. And Tom Usiak in Pennsylvania says good afternoon to our viewers. Doug Forrest is in L.A. Steve Jokums says hello to us all there. And he's in Lake County Spaceport in Illinois. Dave Stange is in Macomb, Michigan, and another bonus day, he says, of nice warm weather. Johnny's probably oiling up his snowplow for his driveway there, making sure all that works good. And CB says it was really cloudy and short period of when you could even see it. So SpaceX pushing the envelope weather-wise always when they're doing these launches. Yeah. And yet we did have a good launch, Tom Celentano. And it's third time's a charm on this Starlink mission. For whatever reasons, it got scrubbed last night. So we're glad that you're all on board with us today. And happy Veterans Day to you veterans out there. We're celebrating all month with free admission to you, and well deserved. Let me go forward here with the photo. That was my closing photo there that I've blown. Katie Coleman, astronaut, reminded us all on Facebook, and I shared it on ours, that we lost this wonderful gentleman, Frank Borman. 1 year ago today is when Frank went up to the big spaceport in the sky at age 95. All right. Wow. And of course, his buddy Jim Lovell is 95, soon to be 96 next year. Inseparable, literally, as friends, and also sitting beside each other in that Gemini spacecraft, number 7, for 2 weeks. And but really a tremendous supporter of the American space program. So many stories about Frank as we look back on his long life and celebrating 1 year of his passing there. Thank you, Katie Coleman, for reminding us of that. And that plays into our theme of the Gemini monuments there. And you can ask John, when he walked in here a little after 1, I said, I really don't have an idea what today's show's going to be. And so hopefully what I whipped together here is not scrambled eggs, but a good program that you can all remember and inspire you to come to Titusville and see our Space View Park. This is a photograph that I took several years ago in the autumn. Quite happy with it because it not only shows the wonderful 2, the sign of the Gemini, all right, the brothers Gemini, the twins, that Greek or Roman mythology had them founding the city of Rome, all right. The VAB's right there in the background there, the Vehicle Assembly Building, and that shows you that you are 9 miles away from that. So we're about 10 miles away from it where we're sitting. A Space View Park is just 3 blocks away there, and that's a photograph that I took not knowing how long I was going to, or how deep I'd be involved in our museum here. And today I'm the director of the American Space Museum, and very proud to lead what we do here in all areas promoting America's space program. And when you go out there, you see this beautiful pathway with these pedestals on each side, brick and pavers, all right? The pedestals have the handprints of the Gemini astronauts. The pavers are the individual missions, and we'll see a bunch of them up close. And connecting this park where the 2 is, there's a new bridge across there that I didn't get a picture to show today, but we'll do it in future Stay Curious episodes, that connects the Mercury area where many of you have seen rocket launches there over the decades. Now, how did this all happen? John Graham asked me. Well, here's the story, folks. A dentist in Titusville in about early 1990s went to Hollywood and saw the handprints of actors at Grauman's Chinese Theater. I think they had footprints of them too, handprints and footprints there in cement. And he came back to Titusville and approached City Council and said, we need to do that here for our astronauts. This is Brevard County is where it all started. And Titusville was the bedroom community of so many space workers. And this was during the 90s renaissance of urban cities and their communities around them where some money was being given out by the government to spruce up things a little bit. And so the city council found some NASA workers that had some good contacts, and Spaceview Park was born. And I'll be naming a few of those leaders of our early days of the U.S. Space Walk of Fame Foundation. This was known as the Space Walk of Fame. Two words, though, not spacewalk, one word where you're doing an extravehicular activity. And that caused some confusion over the years. And U.S. Space Walk of Fame, as a nonprofit, as I understand it, we were always the last group to be introduced at anything alphabetically. Well, that's why you have Acme, this and that and the other, so you're first in the phone book. If you don't know what a phone book because you're under 40 years old, Google that, okay?
I see Dave there. He goes, he hasn't seen the entire thing
Are
yet.
you on your mic there or not when
Yeah,
you're talking?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
he hasn't seen the entire thing yet, and he wants to, go on a personal tour. I figured maybe I can go with you both
Right.
for that personal tour.
Right. Well, we'll small fee. We'll be able to do that. Dave Stange, of course, he's one of our wonderful financial contributors, as is Bill Whiting there. Good afternoon from sunny Carlton, Michigan. Believe that's a suburb around the Detroit area. Bill's also a dual citizen of Canada up there, and quite proud of that. And hopefully he'll be back in town in January. And we do miss Bill, another great volunteer. Dave wishes he could get his wife Julie to move here, but he's got several beautiful grandchildren, including Mia, who's probably watching there. So hello, little 2-year-old Mia. Glad that you're watching with Grandpa today. But that's how it all started. And this really snowballed into something where the U.S. Space Walk of Fame had a little office, and for $100, you could put your name on the Mercury Monument or the Gemini Monument. And I'll show you how that's done in a minute. And so as people would fill out the form and to get their name immortalized at these two monuments, people would come in with a box and said, by the way, my sister died and she worked at NASA or a contractor for NASA. We found this box of stuff in the closet next to her bowling ball bag, and we don't know what it is, and you can have it. And thus was the museum born out of this. So a small, humble museum at first, and then it was through been 7 different locations, and we've been here 9 years on US 1 South, but it was in 2 Titusville malls, the J.C. Penney's mall it was called, and the what's the other name for the mall there? I forget, but it'll come back. Something Point Mall, but someone will come in there and tell me about that. That's immaterial there, and so that's how the museum started. And like I said, being the U.S. Space Walk of Fame Foundation, one of our executive directors about 10 years ago, Tara Engel, said, you know what, I'm tired of being the last ones. We're going to change our name to the museum to the American Space Museum. So we're up at the front row up there. And so we're doing business as the American Space Museum under the U.S. Space Walk of Fame Foundation, a legal 501c nonprofit here in the state of Florida. So that's our story, and we're sticking to it. Mm-hmm. By the way, this is exactly beside one of the 3 10-story condos where the whole park was going to be built on the Indian River, which is behind that 2 for Gemini there. And the land got bought out from under them, I'm told. So we did a left turn and built directly behind where I'm taking this picture is the Apollo and then the shuttle monuments. Here's the plaque that's out the beginning of it, the Space Walk of Fame Project Gemini. And why not give a little publicity and love to the people who did this? The city of Titusville was jointly funded. People contributed a lot of money to this, and this was about a $500,000 project in the 1990s. Titusville Community Redevelopment Agency, those are the agencies that sprung up all over America to improve our cities. Florida Inland Navigation District, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, the National Recreational Trails Program, Titusville Board of Realtors, Sandmeyer Steel Company. They are a company still in existence in the Pittsburgh area that donated the stainless steel for the big two up there, as well as our A at the Apollo and the triangle for the shuttle monuments. American Needle Works, the Amandrew Monuments, the AGM Memorials Incorporated, the Lockheed Martin Corporation, and the McDonnell Douglas Corporation, two of the big deals out there at the space rocket ranch, we call it, that were huge contractors out there. And Mr. Lois Ward, one of the early founding members of this. That is our old logo there, the U.S. Space Walk of Fame Foundation. And at the bottom, it has the leaders of our U.S. Space Walk of Fame Foundation 27 years ago. That'd be President Cal Fowler. The vice president was Ray Smith with a Y. Treasurer was Bob Adcock. And the secretary was Wes Hoagland. And I think Wes Hoagland is still alive there, but I believe the others have passed on. And then along came Charlie Mars. And Charlie Mars, who was a NASA manager on many projects, including moving the shuttle pad out to Slick 6 in Vandenberg and the space station Freedom. But Charlie was also the liaison manager between the astronauts and the lunar module. So he knew all the astronauts very well, and he was involved with the lunar module, particularly the ones that landed on it. And talk to Charlie today. We'll see a picture of him here in a minute. Charlie's 88 years old, and I reminded him that his good buddy Ed Gibson is going to be 88 years old tomorrow on November 8th. So we'll see a picture of Charlie here in just a minute that you're going to love. So, next up is a quick history lesson. Those of you youngsters out there that don't really understand the Gemini program, it was a beautiful thing. 10 missions about every 6 weeks, every 2 months. No, it's about every 10 weeks, but almost every 2 months, every other month was a Gemini launch in 1965 and 1966. And those of you that love space history have learned so much about these missions then. They were filled with a lot of drama that didn't really filter down into the American news media. Not saying that NASA kept things a secret. Some things they did. But the Russians, on the mean hand, had done 6 single missions of their Vostok spacecraft, all right, and were developing their 2- and 3-man moonship to beat America to the moon in what was a really undeclared race to the moon with our communist adversaries, all right. During 1965 and 66, 10 missions, putting 20 human beings orbiting the Earth. Several of them did several missions during Gemini. Russia did not fly one flight, one man flight, none, during this period of time. And that was kind of bewildering in a way in there. So, but there's the configuration of the astronauts in it. Again, when you see a Gemini spacecraft, the white area is the area where the trunk, they called it, okay, where the avionics, the tanks for fuel, and the thrusters, and all that stuff was back there. And that was jettisoned on Earth re-entry, and just the capsule came back on there. Did not have a launch tower on it. It had instead ejection seats out of one of those jets that was styled after, that some of these fighter jet pilots had flown in Korea. And there was a real problem with that we're glad never happened, because these ejection seats were going to throw them out with the doors opening. The gull wing doors would open up and eject them out of that. But they were ejecting out of a 100% oxygen environment, and the jet seats were actually a rocket attached to the seat. So, and this was a consideration on the abort of Gemini 6 with Wally Schirra and Tom Stafford. They're sitting there for 2 hours getting soaked in 100% oxygen. That, as we know, the lesson learned from the Apollo 1 fire was extremely flammable. And both astronauts said when they had that launch abort, they were not going to pull that D-ring because they felt they would just been a Roman candle on fire going out of that thing. Some of the things were thought through meticulously. Other things, very obvious like that, kind of slipped through the cracks until we had the tragedy of the Apollo 1 fire. This is the scenario that was going to happen with Gemini to learn how to go to the moon. We were going to take 2 spacecraft to the moon, all right? One was going to orbit the moon and the other land on the moon. So we had to learn docking in space. How do you do that? How do you speed up? How do you slow down? All right. And then we had to learn to work in an environment of 1/6 gravity. So we wanted to start testing spacesuits and see how we could work in the space extravehicular activity. There you see Ed White on the bottom left. And then they did several EVAs. Some of them were canceled because of different situations. I'm not going to get into the whole history of Gemini, as that's what we do with Stay Curious, is highlight the history of flights when they come up. But there's the Gemini control room, okay, that was taken from the Mercury control room at Kennedy Space Center over to Houston for the first time. So, all right. So and then the rendezvous was with a Titan rocket, all right, that had a docking adapter on it, all right. Now the Atlas rocket was launched the Mercury 4 Mercury astronauts. The Titan rocket was hypergolic fuels. Okay, let me go back there. 2 engines, hypergolic fuels. That means these are 2 types of liquid fuels that when they touch each other, and they're in a gaseous stage, and when they touch each other, they ignite. So there's no ignition system needed, anything like that, and this worked beautifully. In fact, some of the Gemini astronauts who rode, Wally Schirra was the only one to ride an Atlas, a Gemini, and a Saturn, not a Saturn V rocket. He did the Saturn 1B rocket on his Apollo 7 mission. But all the astronauts said this drove like a sports car. And of course, they would know what a sports car flew like, okay, for sure. So, and here are all the missions quickly reprised with the astronauts that flew them, all right? And of course, from left to right, over there's GT3 in the top left, the Molly Brown. That was the only one that was allowed to name the spacecraft. And then we've talked about that. Molly Brown was a survivor of the Titanic ocean disaster, and a play was on Broadway. And because Gus Grissom survived his Mercury capsule accidentally hatch blowing, we think the rotors of the helicopter nearby static caused that. He did not cause that, but it sank to the ocean bottom, and he was lucky that his spacesuit didn't fill up, started to, and him go with it. So he teasingly called it the unsinkable Molly Brown, and NASA kind of saw where the astronauts were going and said, we're not going to go there. Okay, you're not going to name you could have a theme like 8 Days or Bust, which GT5 had with Gordon Cooper and the Commander Pete. I'm having a senior moment. Pete Conrad, but they made them cover up that 8 days or bust because if they stayed 7 days or 6 days, they didn't want that to be an issue. 8 days was the target to go to the moon and back, spend a day or 2 orbiting it. So that was an important mission there. So just all these gentlemen, astronauts were my heroes. If you're a baby boomer and watching this show, I know they were your heroes. I had their pictures on my wall, and just it was so exciting because I was a teenager, and every day there was a space news about these astronauts in there. So I'll tell you a personal little story here, John.
Okay.
When one of these missions went off in the morning, I forget which one, I was in 8th grade, and I saw it launch on Walter Cronkite. I think it might have been GT3.
I remember Walter
Saw
Cronkite.
Walter on CBS News, and then I had to go to school. and I'm in first period English class where the bell had rung at 9 o'clock, and I'm in the back room. I was an honor student. I'm going to point that out in English, but I'm listening to my little transistor radio. All right, that looked like a giant pack of cigarettes, if you will. You still know what pack of cigarettes look like. And I had my earbuds in me, though we didn't call it that. We had the ear wire or whatever. And because I'm listening to see when is the spacewalk going to start. And Bill Whiting, you'll appreciate this. Up in Findlay, Ohio, south of Toledo, I was listening to CKLW, the big blowtorch AM radio station out of Windsor, Ontario, that played all the rock and roll music of the day. AM radio was the place to be, not FM. Okay, FM was for opera and stuff that you'd never heard of. Okay, and AM radio was where all the action was with the latest music, and now that's all switched around. Where AM radio is a lot of talk radio, and not much music, and FM, of course, is the music. So anyway.
Do you still have that transistor
Say
radio?
what?
You still have that transistor radio?
I think not maybe that one, but I've got one around the house there, in a leather case, in fact. There, I'll bring that in one day. So I had a 9-volt battery in it, so I'm listening to see because CKLW had news at every 20 minutes, so 3 times an hour you could get an update, and that was the Twitter of the day, folks. How would you know that Ed White had started his spacewalk? Well, today you'd know it on Twitter or any of the cable news networks. I call them cable news networks, satellite news networks now, or social media would know it on there. Okay, but AM radio was definitely the Twitter of the day, and I'm listening at the top at 20 minutes, 20, 40, and at the top of the hour. And the teacher, Miss Miller, points at me and says, "Mark, what are you listening to on that radio?" And I said, "Well, Gemini 4 is going to do a spacewalk." She goes, "I don't care about that stuff. You go to the office." So the bell had just rung, and 3 minutes into class, I'm walking down an empty hallway into the principal's office. The principal looks at me and says, "Mark, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, Miss Miller caught me." We never said busted. Miss Miller caught me listening to the radio in the back, and I'm listening to it because the Gemini spacecraft that launched today is going to do a spacewalk this morning, and I want to know when. And the principal looks at me and he says, "Well, turn it up. We all want to know." And I said, "Well, Miss Miller doesn't. Don't worry about her. What's going on here?" So, true story, and I'll never forget that. But
you got to hang out with your transistor radio in the principal's office.
That's right.
And
while I was in detention, so Miss Miller wouldn't feel that he overrode her authority there.
Oh yeah, didn't want to favor sides there.
That's right.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Well, here is Mike Collins's handprints out there in bronze, okay? And we also have him out at the Apollo monument area there. Some of these astronauts are Wally's in 3 different places, of course, Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo. And then many of the moonwalkers that were Gemini guys are in our Apollo area there. These were harvested by Charlie Mars, most of them, not the early Mercury ones. He wrote a little book about it that's pretty cool, but this is how it looks on top of the pedestals. Okay, so that is my segue into Marty's trivia question of the day. All right, now we're going to exclude you, Steve Jokums. All right, we love you, but we want everyone to have a fair chance to answer a question once a week, so you are allowed 1 correct question a week, please. And you've already had yours, Steve, but as a little extra thing for you, let's see, make me big there. Right. Oh, here I am.
Yeah, there you go.
There I am. Here is Steve Jokums' business, Lake County Spaceport. Yeah. He is on eBay and Facebook and sells decals for your shuttle models and other things. And that's his anniversary logo there for you, Steve. We love you, and he's been a very good financial contributor to us. But we want everybody to feel like that they can participate in this, because I know Steve's not looking at Google. Okay, I'm positive of that. And he says rats. Well, I'm the rat Fink, okay? So
that's a cool looking decal. I love it.
I know, Steve, you go along with that because everybody wants to have a chance to answer that. So So let's look at what Marty's question is today again. Let me throw that back up there and make me small. When astronaut Mike Collins was the first director of the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., he was in his office one day, and this is around the 1970s, okay, because he started that in like 1972 period. A future astronaut walked into his office and said, "Hi, Mike, I want to be an astronaut someday." Who was that astronaut? All right. And we will let you know at the end of the program. So put your answers in there, and we'll tell you who the winner is, and it won't be Steve Jokums, and he understands that. He goes, "Don't put the rocket down." Okay.
Oh, the rocket was the patch was tilted down. I see.
Oh, I see.
That's what he's saying.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was going. Yeah. Let's give him some more love there. Make me small. There's his love there. Okay. Beautiful patch. He designed it. Okay. And we are so appreciative of Steve. He is. Why I say that is he's already supplied us with two great surprises that you attendees of the Shuttle Fest in April will receive. Okay. But great guy and beautiful artwork there. So, who was the astronaut that walked in Mike Collins's office and said at the national in Washington D.C. at the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum and said, "I am going to be an astronaut someday," and this person became an astronaut. Okay, so that's a good one, Marty.
Yeah. I don't know it. I don't know it.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the pavers and what's all out there at Spaceview Park Gemini Monument there. There you see, I think that could be Mike's in front of me there. I can't see whose that is. But these pavers are on, these handprints are on top of the two of a column. And there's the columns there, okay? They actually had lighting in them that would subtly light on each side with a little grid. The area there, that has been shut off. And after 27 years, as it was today, November 7th, 1997, that this was all dedicated. And our good friend and the patch guy, Tim Gagnon, says he was at that event, as was astronaut John Young. Couldn't find any pictures of that in our archives, and our godfather Charlie Mars said he didn't know where any were. But whose handprints? Oh, that's John Young's handprints there. So he was there. But you notice that the rebarb they used inside was not ocean worthy rebarb. This is within 100 yards of the Indian River. That is a brackish intercoastal water there, and it started to deteriorate. Now, Spaceview Park is under the lawn care of the city of county. The county of Brevard County takes care of it. The city of Titusville patrols it, and they push everything else on our museum and our U.S. Space Walk of Fame Foundation, except the maintenance of it. And the county, I mean, has tried to fix these up, and it wasn't a good fix. And we're still going to look for a different way to do it, or these concrete pedestals with rebarb after 27 years, could be. We need to rethink things. We need metal ones out there is what I think we need. Those astronauts who passed away before the handprints were harvested in the late 1990s, like Mr. Ed White, were beautifully depicted in a bronze relief of their image by Sandy Storm. Sandy Storm is the artist who did the bronze everything at our Spaceview Park. And I tried to get Sandy on here a few times. She's in St. Petersburg, but she hopefully we'll get her on here one day. But this is really a labor of love, and I know she was paid for it. But there's Ed White, the statue of President John F. Kennedy out there is so accurate that his daughter Caroline Kennedy wanted a copy of that statue when she saw a photograph of it, but one of her friends sent her, but they had already broke the mold for it, I think, at that time. Did you have something you wanted to say,
Yeah,
John?
Marty just chimed in, and Marty wanted me to remind you about Sears Town Mall.
Okay, Sears Town Mall. That's the Penny's Mall and the Sears Town Mall was the two places where this was. The museum was at Sears Towns Mall. Both malls, they had big spaces there, and they kind of gave them areas that they couldn't rent or wouldn't rent or lease for free. And they had Alan Shepard's Corvette in there for many years. In
Oh,
there.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. No, and that Corvette ended up in someone's backyard, and someone's restoring it now, I believe. So once again, Marty's question is, who was the astronaut that walked in Mike Collins's Smithsonian Space Museum and said they were going to be an astronaut? Well, here's what those pavers look like. Here's the Conrad Gordon mission. It has the date, a very accurate imprint of the logo or mission patch on there. Again, the 2 is just so gorgeous in the back, and just on the other side of it is the Indian River. All right. Miracle City Mall, that's the other one. That's where Penny's was, I guess. Miracle City Mall and Sears Town Mall, and they're notorious for being like malls were. John, I read somewhere that a mall has not been built in America maybe in the entire 21st century.
I believe that.
They're strip malls, and after that huge one in Minnesota or whatever was built, they're kind of but a lot of them are. That doesn't mean they're all torn down, but just a new one hasn't been built.
I see some turning into flea markets
in decades.
now.
Turn them into flea markets. So these pavers also honored the hardware, and this is a beautiful paver, the Gemini Titan launch vehicle. Again, the Titan rocket was then used as the target rocket with an adapted docking collar on it, so that the nose of the Gemini spacecraft would fit in there, and they could actually fire the Titan rocket to go up higher, like Gemini 11 and 12 did, setting the records of 800 miles that was broken by the Polaris Dawn mission this summer on there. So, and I like how they did them they didn't do it square across. Of course, they knew that a rocket would fit better in this situation there. There's the GT3 with Molly Brown on March 23rd, 1965, Grissom and Young. There's the first spacewalk of McDivitt and White, June 3rd was the launch date, 1965. And GT6 with Wally Schirra and Tom Stafford that I talked about. That was aborted twice. Once when the Titan rocket that was the target launched just hours before. They actually were trying to launch the target vehicle 90 minutes before the crewed spacecraft goes up there. Notice I'm saying crewed, though there weren't any women in space until the shuttle, but it was a manned mission, of course. We'll be celebrating that one December 15th, 1965, as that was a quick 1.5 day mission to go up and visit Jim Lovell and our belated Frank Borman that had been up there for 2 months, or 2 weeks, 2 weeks up there. Just to test the endurance of man and machine. That is a 6 is made for the deal there. And wouldn't you know it, that the General Tom Stafford did go out and visit Spaceview Park. This is where the names are carved on in marble. All right, quite an expensive endeavor and too expensive to do today. So we're not taking any more Gemini workers. If you're alive, you'd be in your 80s for sure. There's Tom in the blue with our friend and godfather, Charlie Mars. There, the National Space NASA had their own list. I learned very easily when I was calling people who worked for, let's say, Grumman or McDonald, calling them NASA employees, and you got the evil eye when I would say that, because they were contractors. NASA did not build anything. They are your homeowner, and NASA subcontractors did the work of building the vehicles and everything involved with that, just like you hire a subcontractor to do your electrical, your roof, your AC units and so forth. And that's the way to think about it. So there's the U.S. Air Force, McDonnell Aircraft Corp. that built the Gemini and Mercury spacecraft, aerospace at the bottom there. So other sides have different places, like they have a Johnson Space Center group on one side, and this is just a beautiful thing, very polished. In fact, you can see me being a photographer myself. I'm always looking for the reflection of the photographer in the pictures, and you see me standing there in the middle beneath the Defense Department of the United States efforts in there. Let's see what. Oh, is the Merritt Island Mall still open? Neil 1030 asks. Yes, it is. Uh, uh, all right, Steve's technically corrected me. The Atlas Aegina was the docking, not the Titan. Okay, excuse me. It was a derivative of that. So see how much Steve knows? He's still going to lay it on us here.
I know, he knows
And
quite a
thank
bit.
you. I got no notes, no teleprompter, nothing in front of me, folks, for 4 years. So I do make a lot of mistakes, and I appreciate everybody getting us up there. It was the Atlas rocket that pushed the Aegina up there, and I should have known that because but it was the Atlas Centaur that put so many spacecraft, over 300 communication satellites in orbit in there. Yeah, it is open. Like Carlton says, they have a theater in there, and a bunch of other stuff in there, and it's still surviving. And I've been there many times to the Merritt Island Mall. The beautiful Veterans Memorial Center is right behind it. Another beautiful shot I took, eclipsing the sun with the Sandmeyer stainless steel that they so generously donated and did a great job with. Okay, gives you an idea of the dimensions of the thing. And there is the Stafford Cernan's second mission. Okay, he was actually, they were the backup crew when Elliot C. and Richard Bassett were killed in a tragic T-38 jet crash at St. Louis, when the bad weather landing at McDonald actually hit one of the buildings there. So pretty crazy accident, and this is one of the first times that a backup crew took over. So Stafford was again on Pad 14 to launch a Titan rocket to space with Gene Cernan, and this time he was the commander. There is the general at his handprints there with Charlie Mars. Looks like he's kind of pointing at his signature or something in there. They carved their signatures with a wood stick. Okay, like a wood dowel is what they used, was to put their name in there. And God bless our late executive director, Karen Conklin, standing there with Charlie there. So 27 years ago, this was established, and this is probably in the first couple years that the General Tom Stafford went out there. And Charlie always tells me, you couldn't get the phone away from him, all right? I think at this point he was actually over Edwards Air Force Base in his retirement. Could have been a moonwalker after Apollo 10 barnstorming the moon, but he enjoyed being the general over Edwards Air Force Base just as much. And I met him several times, and you all at Space Fest in Tucson, I'm sure, talked to him a bunch. But I get the inclination that he felt like, I've had my love, I've had my missions. I wanted to give it to somebody else. If I wasn't the first or second on the moon, that's okay. I saw the moon with my own eyes from 60 miles up, or I actually got down to about 9 miles up with Gino in Snoopy in there. But always on the phone. Lived to age 93, died a year ago, I believe in March. and there's some plans in the works to honor him this spring in a wonderful dinner type of situation there. The general and our godfather there, Charlie Mars, and Charlie's just been the museum would not be what it's like now today without that gentleman there. And he knew Tom way back when they were trading dirty jokes in his office during the Apollo era. I guarantee you that there. So there's what the whole situation looks like up close on a beautiful day up there as we're winding down this episode of Stay Curious. Okay. Hope that you've all enjoyed it there. Got to have your handprints on the man. Okay. I never miss an opportunity walking by Neil Armstrong's handprints to put mine on it there. And that is my handprints. Though I think he was 5'8". By the way, the general there was 6 foot. One of the, let me see how he dwarfs Charlie there. Well, he was 6 foot at one time. He got osteoporosis pretty bad. But there's Neil Armstrong's. We have him in 3 places, of course. Gemini, Apollo out there in our own museum. I'm always taking Neil with me to outreach events along with Sally. We have Sally Ride and Eileen Collins and Kathy Sullivan's in our extraordinary women's gallery here at the American Space Museum, where we now have 80 women proudly shown on our walls orbiting the Earth as we put up the Chinese woman, the first Chinese engineer to go to space. So who was the person that walked into Mike Collins's office and said, "Hi, Mike, I want to be an astronaut"? I don't see any takers on that one.
There has been, Marty stumped our audience, our chat, with that question.
Jokums, do you know who it is? I'll let him come in there and take a stab at it since nobody else wants to guess. Mm-hmm. This is why we put him in timeout, folks. Okay, Ken Jennings timeout. Is someone writing the chat there on it? Okay. Didn't have time to throw her picture in there, but according to Marty, that person is Judy Resnick, the Akron-born astronaut, one crew mission 51C, I believe, with our good friend Charlie Walker, or D, it's a D, D, and of course lost her life in the Challenger accident. So, Marty, you stumped him, buddy. All right.
Congratulations,
and
Marty.
Marty, a voracious reader, is getting these questions out of some of the books that he has there. So that's a good one, Charlie, or Marty.
I'm going to put a point, that's a point for Marty on the board.
There you go. There you go. And Steve Jokums even appreciates that one, Marty, giving you a big nice there. Well, we've given a shout out to Neil and Bill Whiting and Tom Celentano, Dave Stange, Steve, Doug Forrest, Tom Usiak, and of course CB Carlton Bailey there. Thank you all for straightening me out. I didn't write down that it was the Atlas Agena rocket. Of course, the Agena was a very important second stage in NASA's arsenal or stable of rockets out there. So, John, thank you for a wonderful job. He has streamlined my Stream Labs situation here with a little device instead of a whole keyboard in front of me to switch the pictures around there. And appropriately, I caught a moonrise over the Gemini monument one evening, as that is what was the goal of Gemini, was to put man on the moon, and particularly an American, before the Russians did. So let me go making me big there. That worked out good. So thank you all for watching today, okay? And Veterans Month here at the American Space Museum. If you're local and a veteran, please come in on the house on us and see our wonderful exhibits that celebrate the space worker and the American space program like no other museum you will ever find. And I've been to about 20 space museums, folks, and that's why I'm here, because I fell in love with this place. So next, all right, there we are. And until tomorrow, which will be a TGIF Friday for me and so many of you, we'll throw together a program probably on space news, as a lot of you keep me abreast of some of the space news going on. And I kind of like reading from the news headlines once in a while on our humble little podcast here. So until tomorrow, I'm Mark Marquette saying I can't wait to see you again to bridge the space between us.